Okay, so we'll get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining the grad student panel webinar. This is brought to you by the NISS, the National Institute of Statistical Sciences. This webinar is going to be part 2 of 3 of NIST's Undergraduate Students Guide for the Grad School series. Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you all get something out of this during the next hour from our panelists as well as myself. My name is Jericho. We'll be moderating today's session. We have these 8 terrific panelists here that will be talking about some of their grad school experiences. I'll be answering your questions and so forth. So just to give you a background on myself, I'm currently a 4th-year PhD student. I'm actually in my office right now. I'm currently in the stats department at the University of California, Riverside. And some of my research interests include high-dimensional variable selection, sports statistics, and machine learning. Right now with my dissertation, I'm currently looking at kind of the application of these deep generated knockoffs for multinomial data. This relates to kind of that high-dimensional variable selection. With that said, so just a few guidelines for at least today's grad student panel. So at least with this panel, this is a great way to at least learn more about the next steps of an academic journey. All of us have kind of been through, at least on the panelists, have been through at least that experience, trying to figure out at least the grad program we want to be in and kind of going through that experience. So we'll be trying with some of these accomplished graduate students from advanced degrees. This involves statistics, biostatistics, and data science. They're going to share their experiences, their advice, and insights to help navigate that transition from undergrad to graduate studies. Now, a few things to keep in mind. So we have some questions to guide at least this session over the next hour. However, we do encourage you to at least use that Q&A feature at the bottom. So if there are any questions that you do have as these panels are talking, feel free to put them in the Q&A session at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There will be someone there to answer your questions. We'll also have a Q&A during the last 15 to 20 minutes of this particular grad school student panel. But without further ado, we're going to start off this particular panel. We'll have each panelist briefly introduce themselves. They're going to tell us their name, their program, their degree, the year in their program, and then they're also going to talk about at least what their research is going to be. So with that, we'll start with Manchi with what they have to say.
Hi, everyone. My name is Manchi. So I'm currently in the 5th year of my PhD in biostatistics. I'm from the University of Pittsburgh. And so before that, I got my master's degree also in biostatistics from Columbia University. The reason why I chose University of Pittsburgh, I will highly recommend you to get the good chance of the campus visits once you have got some offers from some programs. So you will get a chance to take a look around the campus and talk with different professors in person. And then you can see like which program is more in the vibe aligned with you. So yeah, the reason why I chose University of Pittsburgh is that I have done several campus visits by that time. And then I found that like this program is actually the best one that align with my pride. And in our program, we have do a lot of collaborations with the UPMC or Carnegie Mellon University, or also the stats departments from our own school. So there are a lot of kind of different opportunities within our program. Yeah, and yeah, that's pretty much oh, sorry, I forgot to talk about my thesis. My thesis is about developing the statistical methods for high-dimensional genomics data, specifically for cellular heterogeneity. Yeah, thank you.
Next, we have Sitija.
Howdy, everyone. So yeah, my name is Sitija Monage. I did my bachelor's degree in applied mathematics with an emphasis in statistics at Texas A&M in College Station. And I did some research projects there, both like one in math and one in stats, some kind of maybe more applied stuff. And then I applied straight for a PhD, and now I am at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. I am still a second year statistics PhD student here, so I'm kind of still a baby, I think, in the PhD world. I've started looking at some research ideas. Currently, what the research that I'm trying to do looks at this thing called compositional data, which is just a specific way that data is organized, and it's really applicable to like the microbiome, for example. So currently my work is focused around trying to deal with this type of data that's useful in the microbiome. So yeah, I'm a second year statistics PhD student, and I graduated from Texas A&M University.
All right, thank you, Satija. Next we have Hannah.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. I'm Hannah Waddell. I am a sixth year PhD student at Emory University in the biostatistics department. And so just a quick recap of how I got here. Quite a long journey, but in undergraduate, I was a biology major until I realized that I was taking a bunch of extra statistics classes for fun. And it was, I should do the thing that I'm doing for fun. So I switched to a statistics major, and then I had a professor who I really appreciate. He said, "Have you considered graduate school?" And so I asked him, I said, sure. And then I asked him, where to apply, and asked a couple other professors, and then also asked them for some advice. And, they told me some helpful math classes to take, ones that involve proofs. Those are really good to take for a PhD. And so I applied to, I made a big spreadsheet of PhD programs, took the GRE, applied to about 7, just to see if I could get in, and was planning to prepare with a master's degree too, if that didn't work. But I did get into Emory, and I was really excited about that. I really liked the offer, and I really, really liked the campus visit. There was a really nice environment here, and just a lot of really good people that I got to meet. And so made it to Atlanta. I graduated from the University of Utah with a mathematics undergraduate degree, so that was a pretty big move. And then have been working through the program ever since. It's definitely been kind of a marathon, and a lot of different milestones along the way. There have been some difficulties, with trying to find an advisor. I ended up kind of switching advisors partway through the first part of the dissertation, but really have learned the value of, it's persistence that's going to win instead of in that kind of grit. And so I work in infectious disease modeling, and so analyzing disease outbreaks. Right now we're working with a really cool swine flu data set. So done a lot of learning along the way, but really enjoyed it so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Next we have Lauren.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Vanass. I am also at Emory University, but I am a second-year master's student in the biostatistics program. So I started in undergrad as a biology major as well. Kind of similar story to Hannah, where I would take stats for fun, or I guess mathematical courses for fun, and I really enjoyed it. So then I decided to switch, and I ended up getting my degree in statistics and computational biology. And that was at the University of Rochester in New York. And then I essentially decided to go to grad school, but I was thinking more PhD at first, so I applied all PhD. But then I was offered a master's spot at Emory, and I decided to take that just because I don't know if I was ready to commit to a full 5 or 6 years, and I didn't want to pigeonhole myself in just one field, and I was unsure of what I wanted to do. So I thought a master's was the better decision for me to decide better what I wanted to do and get more experience under my belt. And I chose Emory just because I loved the research being done at Emory. I remember going through the faculty website and looking at all the professors, and there's just so many that I was writing down on my spreadsheets, like, oh, I love this person. I like this person's research. So it was really easy to find people that aligned with my interests as well. So that helped make my decision to apply to Emory. The research I'm currently doing at Emory, I'm working on my master's thesis in Bayesian spatiotemporal modeling of diabetic health outcomes and transportation vulnerability in the state of Georgia. And I guess some advice would be reach out to advisors and have your academic advisors help you throughout this process, because I remember that was probably some of the biggest help I ever received, was just like absolutely berating my advisors with questions and meetings and asking for help. So definitely reaching out and getting as much intel as possible when making decisions is something that's very helpful. But yeah, that's about me.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren, for your input. Next we have Ruth.
Hi everyone, I'm Ru. I'm also a second year biostatistics student in Emory as Lauren. Before coming to Emory, I work as a physician in China. In my previous role, we heavily rely on genetics and clinical data to predict patient outcomes and provide personalized treatment. However, I often questioned the accuracy of our results and whether the decision truly benefits the patients. So I think, okay, I can learn more about it because I always have passion for math and numbers. And then I just apply and come to Emory. I think the biggest challenges I faced was the fact I have been away from math for many years. So my confidence was initially low when I applied for graduate programs. However, upon arrival, I was surprised to find that many of my classmates came from non-math background. So it was challenging at first semester, but I gradually gained confidence by dedicating more time to studying theory and programming. So I'm grateful that I chose to pursue a master's degree first because for students without a strong background in math like me, pursuing a master's degree can serve as like a way to gain deeper understanding of statistical areas. And in master programs, it allows you to explore various research areas, helping you discover your truly interests. And I'm currently engaged in statistical genetics analysis, focusing on technologies like single-cell sequencing and spatial transcriptomics. And in addition to my thesis research, I collaborate with professors from Emory School of Medicine, and we provide statistical support, and we investigate the biological and social ecological factors that affect human health. So I think the research is very rewarding, and I really enjoy my master's program and research I'm involved in. So if you have any questions about master program or would like to get further information, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to connect and provide assistance. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Next we have Jacob.
Hey everyone. Yeah, my name is Jacob. I'm a second-year PhD student at Texas A&M in the statistics department. So that means I started fall of 2022, so last year. Before this, I did my undergrad and master's at BYU, and I finished my bachelor's degree, my undergrad there, going into the master's thinking I just wanted to get a little bit more experience, a little bit more of that cutting edge knowledge to put me out there and differentiate me in the industry. And what I found in my 2 years of doing the master's program there was that I really enjoyed the theory more than my classmates did. I had a lot of classmates who were really good with coding and statistical analyses and things that translate really well in industry. And I enjoyed those things too, but I found that I was also really enjoying the theory part, whereas most people weren't, and I was quite good at it. And so I took that as that in addition to some research I was doing as a master's student with my advisor as an indication that okay, if I enjoy research and I'm decent with the theory, I might fit well in a PhD program. And so I applied to I think 6 different programs. And A&M was one of the first ones, actually was the first one that got back to me. And my advisor in my master's program was actually a professor at A&M years before, and so he was well connected, and he directed me to some people to talk to, and everyone I talked to seemed like they really enjoyed the program and had positive things to say. So I went ahead and took that offer and moved down here just over a year ago. Aside from that, for my research interests, so I'm only a second year. I just took my qualifying exams over the summer. So I've gotten like that core coursework out of the way, and I'm just now starting to dig into my research. Overarchingly, my main interest is statistical computing. I enjoy finding ways to speed things up, speed up code, rewrite it to make it run in parallel, testing different methods and seeing which one gives better results in various problems. Specifically, right now, I'm getting started on a Markov chain sampler, an MCMC sampler for really big spatial data sets. And of course, the problem with MCMC is if you want to accomplish many iterations, that can take a few hours or days, depending on how big your problem is. And of course, in spatial data sets, we often have these really massive data sets. And so the thing I'm working on right now is how to rearrange those data sets such that many chains can be run in parallel at the same time, and you can accomplish the analysis faster.
All right, thank you, Jacob. Next up, we have Sam.
All right, I'm Sam. I'm also a PhD student at Texas A&M. I'm a fourth-year PhD student. And my research is kind of sticking with everybody else. I work on dimension reduction and high-dimensional statistics, but also like Jacob, I work on spatial statistics and trying to have some fast computations for some spatial problems. Everything is kind of under the realm of environmental problems. So I work on air quality monitoring data, and climate change detection attribution is another problem I'm working on. And in addition to my research, I also work as a year-round intern at Sandia National Lab, where I work with the Nuclear Nonproliferation Group and work with engineers and public policy people. Before I came here, I did my undergrad in physics at Ohio State, and then I didn't know what I was going to do afterwards. For personal reasons, I was going to move to Wisconsin. I knew that. So I applied to a master's program at Marquette, a small school in Milwaukee, and was lucky to get in there. And then found out that I really enjoyed doing statistics research there. And after 1 year there, I applied to PhD programs and was very lucky to get in here. So came to Texas A&M. My one piece of advice for people is to keep an open mind and say yes to different projects. You might have an idea of what you want to work on now, but there's so many cool and interesting problems people are working on. If you just get started on one, you might find you really enjoy working on that, even if it's not what you think you want to work on right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And last but not least, we have Isha.
Hi everyone, my name is Isha. I'm currently a second-year master's student at Harvard University studying data science. A little bit about my program: it's a 2-year program if you choose to do a master's thesis, and it's 1.5 years if you don't do a thesis. So I actually decided not to do a thesis because I want to start in industry. So I will be working full-time with Microsoft starting early in the summer as a data scientist. I did my undergrad at Cornell University, where I double majored in computer science and statistics. And I guess the main reason why I chose to apply for a master's program in data science was because in my junior year, I took a machine learning class and I absolutely loved it. And I realized I wanted to do that as a career. However, I didn't have enough space in my senior year schedule to take the classes that I wanted. So I decided to, extend my schooling by doing a master's program and take all the classes that I wanted to. And in terms of reasons of why I chose Harvard as my program, I researched the professors ahead of time, and a lot of the professors in my program are really famous in the machine learning field and are doing really cool research, and I wanted to talk to them and get a chance to network with them. And I also chose Harvard because of its really strong alumni network, since my end goal was to work in industry, especially at a big tech company. I wanted to go where I could network with the alumni, and I actually ended up getting recruited for Microsoft through Harvard, so it ended up working out. And I guess in terms of advice for applications, I would really focus on getting really good letters of recommendation from people who know your work ethic and know you at a personal level. I got mine from my research advisor and then my internship project manager, as well as my stats professor who I took 4 classes with. And in terms of grad school itself, kind of like how Sam was saying, it's really important to keep an open mind, because sometimes you go in thinking that you have a path that you want to take, and you don't really want to pigeonhole yourself into that, because you can change your mind and it's okay to change your mind. So trying a lot of new things, especially in the beginning of your program, can be really helpful. And yeah, that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Isha. So it looks like we've gone through all the panelists. We'll open up with some questions. I'll have a few questions here to ask you all on the panel this, and we'll open up to some Q&A as well. The first question, though, and some of you have already addressed this, but how did you choose your graduate program, right? And furthermore, right, how did you decide between a PhD versus an MS program? So I'll open up to the panel, and feel free to fight over who wants to go first.
I can take this one first, maybe. So I had two offers, one from A&M and one from another school, and there were kind of two things that pushed me towards Texas A&M, and one I already mentioned, which was just connected this to the department. The professor I did my master's degree under was well connected here. I got the chance to talk to a couple of current professors and a couple of current grad students. So when I had my offer in hand but hadn't accepted it yet, I got to have some Zoom meetings with some of the current students here, ask them about what they were doing, just in a casual one-on-one setting, ask them how they liked it, get, the good and the bad from them, right? The positives and the negatives. And overall, it just seemed like everyone here was happy and had a healthy work-life balance, and there were no red flags that came up with that. The other thing, and for those of this may not apply for those who do masters, but for PhD programs, the idea is that as a PhD student, you are paid, right? You're not paying them, they're paying you. Obviously, it's not a ton of money. Ideally, it should be enough to live. But when you're comparing the financial packages or fellowships offered to you from different universities, it's usually not a lot of money. And to me, there's no shame in prioritizing a school that is willing to offer you a more competitive fellowship or more livable financial package than another one. And so I was able, from Texas A&M as opposed to this other school, I got an offer for a fellowship that made my first year a little bit less stressful and just paid a little bit more than what the other school would have done. So I wouldn't recommend basing your entire decision off of the pay, obviously, but given that as a PhD student, you're not paid very much, there's nothing wrong with prioritizing a few $1,000s more if that's part of the package.
Yeah, if I can jump in, that was great summary of a lot of the reasoning, because I was deciding between two offers, really, between Emory and another school, and things to consider, going in without a master's degree. Emory has this nice track system where I was able to take master's courses for a year to get kind of up to speed, and then get a master's degree along the way after I had taken all my qualifying exams. But those qualifying exams are also something that you really want to look into, because different schools kind of handle them differently. Some of them, I would say Emory I appreciate, because it doesn't feel like they're trying to weed you out with the qualifying exams. But that some of those, they're very rigorous, and they're rigorous here, but some places it's very competitive. And so kind of looking at that, looking at the size of the program, how many students there were was something I appreciated. At Emory, it's a little bit smaller. And then it does the funding structure can be very interesting. And one thing I did like about Emory as well was our first 3 years of funding are guaranteed and not really tied to an advisor. And so again, coming in without that master's degree, I still wasn't quite sure exactly. I didn't know what I wanted to work in. And so looking at that funding structure for the first few years also was really helpful. So yeah, those are some of the decision points.
I can jump in. So because I actually hold a master's degree before I came to this PhD program, so I would like to say something about why I chose to do a master first, because I was also doing a bachelor that is actually unrelated to biostatistics at all. It's about pharmacy. So I would say just try to choose a master's degree if your bachelor is nothing related to data science or biostatistics or statistics. You should get a transition through the graduate program before you actually want to take a step forward. towards a PhD program. So you need to spend like 4 or 5 years in a PhD program. So that is something you really want to think about more seriously. And the reason why I chose Pitt is by that time I actually have a thinking of to find a job in academia in the future. So I actually talked with some senior students from Pitt, and then yeah, I know there are a lot of seniors before here who jump into academia after the graduation. So that's one of the major reasons that I chose our program. But yeah, remember that things will change. So I do admit that like you should think about all of the things, like whether the city you will like, or how is the fellowship they offer you, and what's your aim after your graduation. Yeah, that's my recommendation.
Does anyone else like to chime in on this subject?
I think I don't have too much perspective to add, but just as a data point, if anyone's interested, like there are 7 people in my cohort, and I think 3 came in with the masters and 4 didn't. So I don't think it's unusual either way, whether you choose to do a master's and then do a PhD, or if you go straight from undergrad.
Thank you, everyone. That answered the question. So the next thing, and this is something that I think all of us been through, is just the application process, right? So we have, you know, deadlines for stuff, letters of personal statements and so forth, right? I think for a lot of people on here, right, how did you manage that application process, right? What were those steps? How did you motivate yourself to get through the entire thing, and whatnot? So I'll open it up for the application process.
Yeah, I think I can speak on this a little bit. So I applied to only master's programs, and I think I applied to around 8 programs, and only one of them required the GRE. So I did take the GRE with very limited studying. I recommend if you are going to take the GRE, you should actually study for it properly, especially for the vocab section. But I think basically you should decide first what schools you're interested in, and then decide whether or not you actually need to take the GRE or not. In terms of applications for the schools that didn't need GREs, it was mainly a statement of purpose, and then usually I think around 3 letters of recommendation. And for my statement of purpose, since I was applying to a lot of schools, I kind of generally kept the same formatting for my statement of purpose. I just really changed like the school name and why I want to apply to that school, but I kept, you know, like what my background was, like how I came to the point of wanting to apply to a master's program, like why I got this passion for machine learning, etc. Basically the same across all the letters. And then in terms of recommendations, I think it's very important to kind of have your letter span a wide range of like, I guess, your personality kind of. So, you know, I had one related to me working in industry, then I had one related to me working in from a research perspective, and then I had one related to like how I am in like a coursework perspective. So I kind of covered like all aspects of, I guess, a well-rounded person. And yeah, I think having professors or like, you know, like your work manager or like your project advisors that know you on a personal level will lead to more personalized recommendations, which will help you stand out.
I can talk about this a little bit. Oh, sorry. You go ahead,
You
Lauren.
can go.
Okay. I did it 2 ways. So I applied to a master's first, and I did that by myself, and I'm a procrastinator, and it was a horrible experience. And then I applied to PhD programs, where I applied to a bunch of programs. And what I found very helpful was to have some friends who were going through the same thing. So my fiance was also applying to PhD programs. Some good friends of mine at Marquette were also applying to PhD programs, and we kind of did it jointly. We had spreadsheets. We would talk to each other about what programs we were applying to. We would share our personal statements with each other and get reviews. That was something I found to be very helpful with the application process.
That's funny. I was about to say the exact same thing, where I had a group of friends, and every single Friday night we would block out 2 hours of just application process. And then for the last hour, we'd all play Minecraft together. So it was just a little motivation afterwards of doing the applications. But I think something that was really surprising to me during the application process was just how long it takes to research schools. So I didn't think it was going to take that long, but going through every single faculty member on every single website of schools that you're interested in does take a lot of time, and you want to be careful about, does this school have faculty that have research that interests me? And if you can only find one or two, you have to evaluate if it's worth applying like $100 to a school that only has a few faculty that you're interested in. So that's something to take into account, and something that I think does deserve time, as well as your personal statement and, of course, getting letters of recommendation.
Yeah, I think the number of schools to apply to is kind of a balancing act. I've heard of people applying to as little as 2 schools and as many as 25. To me, there's 2 major considerations. One is your own resources, so your time, your money. If it weren't, I mean, in my case personally, I didn't have a ton of money at my disposal, and it can easily be $100 per application. Some are more, some are less. But if you're going to apply to 20 schools, I mean, that's a lot of money, and you might just not have the resources for that. And the other thing is your professor's time. Every professor is different, but when they're writing your letters of rec, some of them are really, they like to personalize every letter. And if you're applying to 6 schools, they're going to write 6 fairly different letters. I think my professors who wrote mine, they pretty much wrote one letter and then just tailored it slightly for each school I applied to. So it wasn't too much time on their part. But if I had been applying to like 20 or 25 schools, that would have been a pretty tall request to make of my 3 letter writers to, tailor 20 different letters. So the people who have applied to that many schools, I don't know exactly how they do it. If they get like 2 sets of letter writers, I personally wouldn't recommend it because it's just so expensive. But that's kind of the balancing act, is like, I want to apply to enough schools to get into something that I like, but few enough schools that I'm not over consuming my resources or my professor's time.
One thing that I would add to this discussion is, yeah, I applied to 21 schools, which is like a lot, and it is, yeah, it's probably too much. Like retrospectively, like it's definitely far too much than I needed to. But like when you're applying, I feel like, oh, am I going to get in anywhere? This type of thing. So yeah, I applied to 21 schools. But one way that I organized this is like I made a spreadsheet like everyone did, and just for some specifics on like what the columns of these were, like I would have their website as one column, maybe like if their department emphasizes some sort of type of statistics. Another column is the GRE optional, required? And then one thing was, do they ask you to list professors in their statement of purpose? So then you need to actually like look at professors and mention what they're doing. The deadline, like also what type of transcript they ask for, because some schools ask for an official transcript and some ask for an unofficial transcript. And then for some, they might have an interview or something like that. But yeah, and also I don't want to plug this too much, but I have a YouTube channel where I talk about some grad school stuff. And that's like a video that I made at some point. But yeah, that's like an example of how I used that spreadsheet to organize these 21 applications.
So thank you all that answered that question. Just as a side note as well, if you do have more Q&As, more questions that you want to ask, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We'll go over some of those questions live at 11:45. But to kind of at least wrap up this kind of short session, to ask all the panelists this, how do you balance essentially your academic work with your personal life, right? We hear about grad school being super hard and so forth, right? But what things do you do to kind of balance out kind of those academics with the personal life?
I think I can speak on this a little bit. Since I am doing a master's and not a PhD, I feel like my program sometimes feels a little bit more rushed. I feel like I have to often like cram a lot of the work that I want to do. And, it's not like in a job where you can clock out like off after 5 p.m. or you don't have to work on the weekends. It's school, so you do have to work on the weekends. So I think the important thing is really planning ahead of time and not procrastinating. So if you plan to give yourself, like to take like Saturday evenings off or Sunday evening off, then you should really try to stick to your plan and like doing all the work that you schedule to do during the week and during like the morning of the weekends. So you can at least schedule some break times, and you can also join, I guess, like to kind of push yourself to have this like work-life balance, you can also join like other clubs that are not related to, I guess, like academia or like what you're doing. Like, for example, like I'm part of a dance team and that has like nothing to do with what I'm studying, but you know, it still gives me a break Tuesday, Thursday. And it's like, you have to show up to practice. So then I'm like motivated, like, okay, I have to set this time aside for myself. So that's one of the ways you can like balance your work life.
Yeah, I can offer a little perspective on this. You know, that sixth year PhD victory lap, part of it was because I had some health problems in the start of my PhD and ended up taking time off for a medical leave. And I really appreciated the response. Emory was very generous with me. You know, you can, if you're interested in, you know, looking at the most schools will have like a graduate student handbook that has their policies around that. And so I was able to take a medical leave and then come back and resume my degree. But it was important to take care of myself, and just the department has been very helpful with that too.
I would also say that it's important to try to make friends with your classmates. I honestly don't know what I would do without my classmates. Just with study sessions and, you know, hanging out on the weekends and making plans, it's really important to not feel alone, especially since I'm not from anywhere near Atlanta. So I have no family or relatives in the area. So it's kind of just moving here alone, and it's very daunting, and it's really easy to feel alone when you don't feel like anyone else is going through the same thing as you. So making friends with your classmates and you're all kind of going through the same thing together, it's really helpful, especially when you have like hard homework assignments or a big test coming up. You can all relate to one another. It's really nice.
I can also offer some of my thinkings. So for me, I think like raising a kitten is really helpful for me. Like my kitten always accompany me when I'm doing my research. It really helps me a lot. And then yeah, it helps you to alleviate some like academic stress. Yeah. Try to get some emotional pet supports maybe from the school. I know there are a lot of like a therapy dog session from our department, not from the department, but from the school. And also I know that like most of the PhD students from our department actually have a cat. Yeah, like almost 19% of them. Yeah.
Okay, if there are no other responses, thank you all to their respond to that question. We'll go into some of the questions in the Q&A, and these are just going to be a combination of a few questions that I do see. So we'll start with this question that I'm noticing the students are wondering what they should do in undergrad in order to kind of prepare themselves for grad school. So I guess twofold in the sense of, well, what would be projects or things to do in undergrad to help kind of with my application into grad school? And then on top of that, how would I be able to get maybe a strong recommendation letter?
I can speak on this a bit. So in terms of what I did in undergrad, I did research for the Nutrient Management Spirit program at Cornell. And even though this was in the agriculture department and I was in engineering and I had nothing to do with agriculture, I was using machine learning methods to predict farm yield from drone imagery of farms. So I was still using techniques that were related to the field that I was interested in. So it's okay to do research that's not directly in your department, but you're still, I guess, utilizing the techniques or like showcasing the skills that you would need in applying for a program related to what you're interested in. I was also a teaching assistant for for Cornell's Intro to Machine Learning class. So I would hold office hours, I would help make the exams and the homework questions. I was also a teaching assistant for intro stats, and I actually had to teach weekly discussion sections on top of holding office hours. So I think if there's a course that you're really good at, it's really good to be a teaching assistant or a teaching fellow, because it shows, you know, your passion and your mastery of the subject and that you're good at communication and like helping others and teaching others, especially if you're doing PhD where they pay you to teach, or even some master's programs also pay you to teach. And I think in general, I also had an internship every single summer of my undergrad, which can be hard to do something every single summer, but as long as you're doing something related to, again, like what you want to go into. For example, I wanted to go into data science. So all of my internships were basically data science or machine learning related. And even if you like say you applied, but you didn't get in anywhere, that's okay. You can do personal projects. For example, if you're trying to go into like computer science, or you're trying to go into data science, machine learning, or even statistics, you can do like Kaggle competitions or like, you know, hackathons. So anything that really shows your interest in the subject and that you're just not applying for these programs like on a whim, just like for the heck of it. Yeah.
I think that when it comes to letters of recommendation, you got to weigh, you know, you want to get famous or well-known people to write you a letter, but you also want people who can speak about you and who like you and respect you. If there's a famous person in your department who you took one class from and you didn't do that well, I wouldn't ask them for a letter. I would pick people who you think will actually write you a nice letter. When I applied to master's programs, I had a letter from a professor of modern Greek and a German literature professor write me letters because they liked me, and it worked out. But I don't know if I would suggest that either, but yeah.
To add to that, I got a letter from my math stat professor, which is I think the class that Sam TA'd when I was, I guess, his student. But yeah, like even if you just have one class, like I was at office hours like every single week. And sometimes that's kind of enough to like, yeah, you just want to try to build a relationship, and like you can kind of like if you speak to a professor enough and ask enough questions, then maybe they'll start to get a sense that you actually like really care about the subject, and that can help when asking for a letter of recommendation eventually.
I think that because most applications will require like 3 letters of recommendation, and just making sure that not all 3 are, you know, the same letter. For me, I had my master's advisor write one for me who kind of saw how I did research. I had another professor write one who I'd been a TA for, so he was able to see kind of like the teaching side of things. And then another professor who taught a theory class that I did really well. And so I had basically one letter that was heavily research oriented, one that was teaching oriented, and one that was learning oriented. I mean, ultimately, the most important thing I think these guys have already been saying is it's more about the person's relationship with you and how well they know you than like how accomplished they are. And it's always the most important thing is to have letter writers who know you well and who have good things to say about you. But if possible, trying to get that balance of like people who have seen different sides of your skill set helps create a more diverse conversion in your letter story.
Yeah, and to finish off, from my perspective, I think, yeah, it's going to be that relation, right? And so having kind of that diverse array of, people that can speak on your experiences, right? So maybe that is someone that was kind of like your boss when you were a TA, or some kind of researcher or something like that. You want to have all of those experiences in there. And this goes into, having that relation with those potential people that are going to write your letters of rec, because they're going to look pretty strong. Whereas maybe you just attended some class and didn't do too much, go to off stars or attended class too much. So I think having that relation and putting in the effort to essentially foster that. I do want to thank the panelists for answering that question. The next question I do want to bring up, at least from what I'm seeing in the chat, is, well, in this case, right, you're doing the research that you're doing currently now, right? Where is kind of your path after a PhD, right? Or after a master's, right? How is that going to be transferred to maybe future jobs, or is that maybe not something that you're worried about?
I think I can speak on this. So I guess the main role of my master's program, at least for me, was so I could kind of build that technical foundation I needed for a role in industry. My goal was to work as a data scientist or a machine learning engineer at a big tech company. And that was one of the reasons why I chose Harvard, was to basically help that transition, one, to build my technical skills, and also to, I guess, make use of Harvard's network. So it'd be easier for me to apply and I guess get access to those type of job listings. Also, a lot of the positions I wanted to apply for also basically had required master's positions. So especially when researching about which schools you want to apply to, if there's a specific company in mind or like a specific industry you would want to go into, I would try checking out like the alumni in that program at that school, you know, that who you could potentially network with if you went to that program. I would also check, you know, which companies recruit from which schools. Like, for example, I knew Microsoft recruited from Harvard, and knew that some big like quant research firms such as Two Sigma, etc., would recruit from Harvard. And that's why I chose to go to Harvard, because I knew that Microsoft sends people here to basically give talks, and they have a separate application for like certain schools and things like that. So I guess really doing your research ahead of time, depending on where you think, what type of path you think you want to go into, is very important.
Yeah, in terms of, you know, how research will relate to my future career, I might continue with infectious disease modeling if I can find a really cool job. It's been great to meet people in that field, but really focusing on like my interests in, you know, computing and stuff is what I really like. And so looking at government, and I'll definitely say we have a lot of people, you know, from biostatistics going right into tech. And so it's focusing, it's some of it's the topic of your research, but the big part of that PhD is a self-motivated original research and conducting that research. And so those are the kinds of that kind of distinguishes it, and that's what companies will like to see, certain research institutions. And I know if you're interested in, you know, switching topics and you, or like if you kind of like a postdoc, if you're interested in academia, some people will use a postdoctoral position to kind of reinforce that research or learn more stuff. So there's still a lot of flexibility, even though you become very specialized on one thing, you do have a wide base of knowledge and skills.
Yeah, I do agree with Hannah. So my thinking for this is that because I did an internship before at a pharmaceutical company, and the manager of mine, she told me that it actually doesn't matter what your thesis is about if you want to apply to be a biostatistician at a pharmaceutical company. So yeah, that's one thing only for a pharmaceutical company, because our degree who is mainly about biostatistics, that was decided to build a job for a biostatistician at a pharmaceutical company. But if you want to find a job at some tech company or other field, I would say try to get a internship before if you want to go after your PhD period, because it's a 5-year time. If you look at the job description when you were in the year 1 of your PhD, things will change by that time. So maybe just try to get an internship before, and then that could help you better prepare for a job at the tech company or some other field.
I can jump in. I think my thesis now is about spatial transcriptomics. It's a very new technology, just maybe in 2 or 3 years. So we borrow a lot of ideas from like imaging and also spatial statistics. So I think one statistic theory can apply in many like field. So it doesn't matter like which areas you are working on now. If you know like the statistical model and know the theory, you can just easily to use it in different areas. Yeah. And my APE is working with like school medicine, because I want to just pursue a career later in like medical research. So for example, we provide them with like a sample size calculation and how to design a medical clinical trial, and how to randomization, how to analyze this data and data cleaning. I think this will be easily to transform to the work experiences later. Yeah, so I just think you can try something you are interested and try to engage in a project or research, and then you will learn a lot.
Okay, so I think we'll end this with one last thing, right? So we'll go through the order that we started initially. But just finish with any closing thoughts you had, and then one last piece of advice that you give to undergraduate students that are looking into grad school.
So my final advice for all of the undergrad students who would like to apply to grad school is that trying to speak with as many people as you can, like your advisor or maybe some senior students or who already did a PhD program in your dream school, or like your friend, because it's if you want to apply for a PhD, it's a 5-time commitment, or sometimes it might be less, but like most of the time, it might be a 4th year or a 5-year commitment. So it's really tough if you didn't like it after you apply to that program. So try to spend more time, talk with different people and get some advice from them. It might be very helpful for you for your future application. Yeah.
One thing that might be helpful for people, like specifically in the application process, is for the statement of purpose. I think there are like some common pitfalls that people kind of fall into. And the remedy for that is like having as many people as you can like look over your statement of purpose, or like staying really organized. Yeah, I mean, I was talking with our graduate program advisor about this, and he was saying like there's like very kind of common things that people do on the statement of purpose, and if you send it to a professor, then they'll kind of be able to guide you. Yeah, because I remember my statement of purpose at the beginning was like super just wish-washy and like actually not compelling at all. But I think it can be like a pretty important part of the application.
Yeah, my piece of advice that I would go back and give to my past self is really don't be nervous to reach out to people, either professors you're interested in speaking with or current students, especially just to learn more about the process. You don't have to go through it alone and figure it out that way. People generally pretty friendly, helpful, and it's good information if the students and professors at a school are friendly when you reach out.
My advice is that it's okay to not know exactly what you want to do. I remember being very daunted by the thought of knowing, like having to know exactly what you want to do, exactly what to write in your personal statement. But as long as you're conveying your passion and your interest for the field that you're applying to, and you have letters of rec that kind of support that you are passionate and interested and hardworking, you're going to be all right.
Yeah, I agree. I think just talking to more people and just to try things you want to do, and just if you spend some time and efforts, and you can make it.
I just want to second what Sitha just said about the statement of purpose. Just find a professor or two in your department who's good with that kind of thing and just run it by them. And I promise you, it'll be really helpful. But also, I think I just wanted to say that like the whole, like what separates a PhD from other degrees is research. And if you're not interested ultimately in doing something research oriented, there's probably better ways you could spend 5 years than doing a PhD. If you're looking for that really cutting edge job at Google or something as a data scientist, a PhD might help, but it might not. I don't know exactly what they do, but the whole point of a PhD is research. And these 5 years, it's a really big opportunity cost to complete a PhD. And so the reason that anyone should do a PhD, of course, is because they enjoy research, they want to conduct research, and they're seeking some kind of career eventually that in some capacity involves that research component. And if that's the reason you're going into a PhD and it's not because you like school or you're afraid of the workforce or whatever, then you're going to be fine.
My advice for undergraduate students and master's students who are interested in a PhD is to just like say yes to different research projects. If you're curious, keep an open mind and work hard. But you'll find that there's valuable stuff in almost every project you work on. And you never know really what thing is going to take off for you, going to make your career. So it's good to be working on many different things.
Yeah, I think going off of what Sam said, you don't know what you like unless you tried it in the first place, right? And you also don't know what you don't like if you don't try it. For example, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I was pre-med my entire freshman year. I took chemistry, I took biology, and I absolutely hated it. And I wouldn't have known that, if I hadn't tried it. And then I wouldn't have known that. And then after that, I decided, okay, let me just do software engineering and then, just go into industry straight after undergrad. But, I hate Java. I hate object-oriented programming. And I was really, really confused until like my junior year of undergrad. And I had a crisis every year, like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I want to do. And then it was really just that one class. Like I took intro to machine learning. I wasn't planning on taking it. It was the only one that fit in my schedule. And I was like, okay, wow, like this is what I want to do. I want to go into data science. And that's kind of what set my entire path from there. So I guess my advice is it's okay to be confused. And the best thing to do when you're confused is to try everything, because then you'll know what you like and you'll know what you don't like. So yeah.
Yeah, and to add to what Isha has said, right, it's just trying out new things and whatnot. I remember in undergrad, I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted to go into grad school, right? And so I think just slowly kind of developing kind of those experiences, trying out new things, where they be in different areas and so forth, right? Kind of gives you kind of that build up into grad school. And then from there, it's all about that exploration, right? So having that curious mind when you're in grad school, both on the research side and with a bunch of other facets in your life, I think it would go a long way. So with that said, let's give a virtual hand to everyone on this panel today, for answering all your questions and whatnot. This will conclude today's session. I want to thank the audience also for attending today's webinar, and thank you to NIST for organizing and hosting this event. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for the last webinar in this Undergraduate Student Guide for Grad School series, which is going to be an alumni panel discussion. That's going to take place next Friday, and you can find more details about that on the website. So with that, thank you to everyone here. Hopefully everyone has a great weekend. And we'll see you all later.